Hey puddins, what is up? Today's video is going to be a story time on how I found out I was pregnant with Shyla. So my ex, which is Shyla's father, I've known him since I was 19 years old. I basically met him through my cousin, and I might have briefly talked about how I met him. I did meet him through my cousin, which she was dating his roommate at the time, which she's in denial of, which I know. So does my ex, and so does your ex know the truth. So there's 4 people that know it, including yourself, even if you're in denial. We're talking about Shyla. We're not talking about anybody else. So I've known my ex, which is Shyla's dad, since I was 19. I don't talk to him now, so I haven't talked to Shyla's dad in a little over 4.5 years. Back in the summer of 2019, I started a job working as a inbound calling representative. Can't even say that word, I'm sorry. You know, it was really great. It was fun. I ended up getting my dog that year, which I don't have her anymore, unfortunately. Her name was Tinkerbell. She was a Chihuahua Dachshund mix, and she was so stinking cute. If I can find a picture, I will post it up here. But anyway, wasn't she adorbs? She was my child. During that summer, it was literally probably like a month after I had began working at this call-in center, I started to talk to my ex, and he was in jail at the time, in a different county, by the way. He wasn't even here in Asheville or anywhere near it. And it was over some girl, and I don't know the whole situation, and I don't think he was really truthful with me and honest with me about why he was in jail to begin with. I think that there was more to the story, and if I would have talked to the actual girl, I would have probably found out her side of the story and linked the puzzle pieces. But low-key, I think he did it. I think it was his fault. So he might be coming at me, but I don't give a fuck. He was in jail, and of course, when you're young and in love, you're also dumb. Well, in my situation, I was fucking dumb. I was stupid as fuck. Like, I think the best thing that came out of this relationship with this person was my daughter. So we began like writing back and forth with letters, and I believe we had a few phone call conversations, but most of the conversations that we were having was through letters. He started talking about there was a possibility, like he was going to court, and there was a possibility that he could be let out. And this was about August, September when he started talking about that. Well, maybe it was like August. And so it was like towards the end of the summertime. And so I had ended up getting really hit hard with a flu. And it was the same week that I had got hit with a flu was when he got released, which was, I want to say it was like middle, or not really the middle, but probably the beginning of September. And he basically called me, was like, hey, can you come pick me up? And I just deadass was like, I'm sick. I can't even, like, I'm doped up on medications. And like, literally, I took 3 days of, off from work because I was sick, that I'm not going to be able to make back because I was still in that 90-day, like, probation period, for like whenever you work, how you have like a 90 days or a 30 day or a 60 day or even 120 day kind of probation period where they're like observing you like very heavily. And so it didn't look good on me, but I was sicker than a dog. I had a doctor's note, so it was all good in the end with that situation. But, you know, he had his ex calling me like, hey, he needs a ride. And I'm like, look, I am in the fucking bed right now, like sicker than a dog. I'm on all kinds of like, you know, what was I on? I was on a bunch of stuff that literally was gonna keep me out, and I wasn't able to drive. And he wanted me to drive like 2 counties over and get him. And literally that would have taken, it was probably like an hour drive. And if I'm so doped up on flu medication and antibiotics, it was dangerous on my end to even go. I don't think anybody having the flu would feel like going anyway, even if they weren't so doped up on medication. Obviously, I was trying to get better. You feel me? So he ended up finding like a way back to Asheville, and in the process he ended up getting run over by like what he says a semi truck, which I don't believe he did. I think he just wanted me to feel fucking sorry for him. He was the type of person to like to play victim and like to have everybody feel sorry for him and want the attention all on him. So I finally got better, and I started to obviously spend time with him and hang out with him. And he was homeless, obviously, because he had just gotten out of jail, and he wasn't living with this girl that basically pressed all these charges against him and everything in this other county, by the way. And so he was just basically, I guess he was like couch hopping and, you know, just like sleeping outside somewhere, I guess. I don't know. And so I made the decision like a dumbass to like basically live in my car with him. Yeah, you guys are like, girl, are you stupid? Because let me tell you my living situation. I was living with my mother, okay? My mother didn't ask for me to pay rent. She just welcomed me with open arms, and that was it. So looking back, I'm like, you stupid. Like, you feel me? Like, it's like, you stupid. You're so stupid. Well, anyway, while I was living in the car with him, we had made Shyla. Let's just put it that way. And immediately, as soon as I guess the deed was done, I felt strange. I felt different. Not in the way like, oh yeah, I got me some dick, but more on the lines of like, something is changing inside of me. Like, something's about to happen. You feel me? Like, it was like one of those like intuitions type of situation where you knew that there was something that was about to happen. And in that instinct, I felt like I was pregnant, or I could be pregnant. You know what I mean? Or I might end up being pregnant out of that situation. So, and let me tell you something. Let me back up a little bit and tell you that with every relationship that I've ever been in, including any guy that I've had multiple occurrences with, let's just put it that way, I always get an STD check. I always get an HIV check. I always get, a check to make sure that I am good 100%. So let me just put it this way. I was clean. So I'm going to emphasize that, okay, for later on in the video. I'll tell you what happens. So probably about a week or two later, maybe it was like a month later, I found out that I got this apartment that I had applied for. And I was super excited because it was like it was my first time moving out of my house. And I believe at this time I was still with my mom. I'm not sure if I was still with my mom. I could have been bouncing back and forth between my mom and my grandmother's house. I'm not really sure, because literally they lived 2 seconds up the road from each other. So let's just put it that way. They still do. So, my grandmother comes with me to like fill out the paperwork. Rent was super cheap. Well, back then it was super cheap for this area, or well, for Asheville in general. And it was a cute 1-bedroom apartment. It was literally just built like a year prior to me moving in, and it was just perfect for me, and I absolutely loved it. It had like where you had like washer and dryer connections. It had a dishwasher, a nice stovetop, like glass top stove, the refrigerator. I mean, like, it all came with like all the appliances besides the washer and dryer. And it was perfect for me at the time because I was a single female. I didn't have a kid at the time. Yes, I did have a boyfriend, but Avi. So he ended up, like, within a few days, he ended up moving in with me. And at the time, we were sleeping on a futon, mattress on the floor. I had some of my clothes there, and like, I think I moved in on a Monday, and I didn't move the rest of my stuff in until the weekend. And literally, I moved my futon mattress, all my clothes, and some other little things. I was later going to come back for my dog, and I was going to later come back for other things, but I wanted, the like necessities that could keep me alive and functioning until I got the rest of my crap. So we ended up moving in. I ended up getting a truck. I think I got a truck from my dad because he, at the time just opened up his business, and I borrowed his truck, and we moved everything in. I think we moved everything in over the weekend, and then we just started living in it, and we started inviting people over to hang out. There was this one guy I remember. He was so freaking awesome, and he was gay, and he was just the sweetest person in the world. But I think I found out later that he passed away, which I'm super, super sad for. But it was all my ex's friends. It was like none of my friends that was hanging out. They would associate with me since I was with my ex, but I wouldn't say they were my friends. So besides the gay guy, even though he was friends with one of my ex's friends, he became my good friend, and I loved him absolutely a lot. I mean, I wish that he was around because, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get emotional and cry because he was a good friend of mine. And then all of a sudden, the month of November, the end of October and the month of November, my ex was not coming home. He wasn't answering his phones because he had 2 phones at the time. And I had this feeling that something was up. This is really hard to say. And one night he decided to come home, which really shocked me because I didn't expect him to be home at all. I thought that he was just like, fuck you, I'm done, I'm out of here. I got what I needed and I'm on to the next bitch. I really thought that. And he came home. I questioned where he was at, of course, and then we kissed and made up. And after that happened, he went to the bathroom and he realized his downstairs was bloody. And I know this is too much information for some people. This is very morbid and disgusting, but he comes in and he says, either there's something wrong with my shit or you're on your period. Because at this point I was taking pregnancy tests and they were all coming back like negative and positive and negative and positive. It was weird how they were coming out, and I hadn't had my period yet, and so I was like kind of suspecting that I was knocked up at this point. So it wasn't like, ooh, surprise, because I had this feeling that I was at this point, but it basically confirmed. I went to use the bathroom myself, and I felt something come out of me, and I looked down and it looked like a blood clot at first. You know how sometimes when you start your period you might get like little blood clots? Well, that's what I thought. I was starting my period and that I was just having a bigger blood clot. But then I didn't flush the toilet yet, and I started looking down and I saw bones and stuff, and I'm thinking, I've miscarried. because let me tell you something. I have had a stillbirth and a miscarriage before Shyla. So I'll talk a little bit about that if you want me to in another like story time video if you want me to. I'm thinking I've miscarried, and so I go to bed. I tell my ex, I'm like, I've miscarried a baby. And so I'm pretty sad, upset, and so I guess he's upset too. I couldn't really tell if he was or not. And so I then woke up. I think I woke up about 6:30, 7 o'clock the next morning because I had to go to work because it was a Friday. And I just felt really sharp pains, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'm actually starting my period now since I've miscarried. So, I prepared. I brought tampons and pads with me just to be on the safe side, and I go to work because I'm supposed to be at work at 9 o'clock, and I drop him off downtown to hang out with his friends for the day. And I go to work, and then I'm starting to feel really bad. So it was about 10:30, 11 when I started to feel bad. Like, I'm talking about, I had excruciating pains to the point where, like, I couldn't focus on my work and anything like that. So, I just started like thinking like, oh my God, like, I can't stop thinking about this pain. I popped a couple of Tylenol in my, in me, and like, I'm thinking, okay, maybe 30 minutes from now it'll be okay. I mean, I took like 4. So, 4 usually at that point relieve the pain. Let's just put it that way. And so it wasn't. And so about 12:30, I go up to my boss, and I'm like, hey, like, I'm not really feeling well, but I'm going to try to make it through the day. And he's like, okay, let me know how you feel. If it gets worse, you can go home. So about 1:30, I'm like hunched over, and the girl next to me goes to my boss and goes, look, she's not good. She needs to go home. So he walks over and he asks me, he's like, are you fine? Are you good? And me, I'm a hard worker. I don't want to leave work. Like, I'm basically dedicated to work. Like, I'm going to work a full day. I was trying to. And he looks at me because he sees that I'm so pale. He sees that, like, I'm just hurting. And literally, he looked at because he can look at my call record of, like, who's called me and everything. And he had noticed that I've been taking, like, multiple bathroom breaks, which is, like, 2 to 5 minutes long breaks that I have, because I have, like, to pause to, like, get my composure back up. And he's like, you're taking a lot of breaks. And he looks at me, he's like, do you really need to go home? Like, I don't mind you going home early, as long as you're going to the hospital. He said, you look bad. You look really, really bad. So I just looked at him and I was like, if you don't mind me going home, I appreciate it. And that's the first time I've ever left work early, because I'm in excruciating pain. Like, that was the first time, and that's not like me. Let me just put it that way, okay? I've never missed a day of work. The job I'm at now, I went home early because the boss, like, was like, hey, I need you to go home early. But, like, I've never really asked to go home early, unless I've told them, like, ahead of time or anything like that. So this was bad. So the drive there, I had to, like, pull off a couple of times because, it got to the point where I couldn't even focus on driving. But I drove there to the hospital by myself. I was, before I left, I called my ex and was like, hey, I'm going to the hospital because I'm having excruciating pain. That's all I told him. Because at that point in my head, I'm thinking, I've already miscarried the baby and this, that, and other. So I texted him, like, I'll text you updates, blah, 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 blah. He's not responding the entire time, okay? He didn't answer his phone, so I left a voicemail, all kinds of stuff. So I get to the hospital, and I'm just letting him know, like, I think I had a miscarriage. I'm in excruciating pain now, and it's worse than any PMS cramp or period cramp you could ever imagine. I don't know what's wrong with me, and I'm freaking out. Like, literally, that's probably what exactly I said, but, in layman's term, let's just put it that way. I was probably over there like, I can't do it, and it was a hot mess. But, so I ended up getting admitted in. Not, like, in a room, and just into the emergency room. And they decided that they were going to give me a urine test and blood work, and then they wanted to give me a pelvic exam. And the results came back from all three of those, and it was confirmed that I still had the pregnancy hormone, which is called, is it HCG? I'm not 100% sure what the exact pregnancy hormone is called, but if you know, comment down below and inform anybody who wants to know what it is, because that would be awesome. But anyway, so they said that I'm still pregnant, and at this point I'm like, no, I just had a miscarriage. I mean, obviously I would probably still have some of the pregnancy hormones in me, because obviously I just miscarried the night before. So in my head I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, well, if you want me to do, be for sure, we can give you a vaginal ultrasound. I'm like, okay, cool. Just gonna never agree to that, okay? Because that thing was the scariest thing ever. It's like this huge, it looks like a huge sex toy with a cord on it connected to a big old computer, and they put like a condom over it, and then they put like lube to help it like go inside you, and it was the worst thing ever, and it was very degrading in my opinion. So I'm sitting there, I'm on the stirrups, and they're like, yes, we see an egg and it's fertilized, but it's in your tubes. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And she's like, I'm not going to confirm it yet, I'm going to let the doctors look at it. And that's all she says, like literally. And I'm like, oh my god, like, why did she say that? Like, why did she, the ultrasound tech, say that? Like, what the hell? Because I remember it was a female, and she was an older lady. She was super sweet. I remember that for some reason. I know some things are a little foggy with this story, but I do remember that part of it, how sweet she was, because she was super kind and nice. And she said, I know this is a very uncomfortable thing to get done, and I just want to make it as comfortable as possible without being too weird about it at the same time. So anyway, so she confirmed it. She printed out some little ultrasound pictures. So she made me get dressed, like in my actual day clothes, and she said, get back into the wheelchair. And she had somebody come down and wheeled me down to like a waiting room type thing for me to wait on like the results of the ultrasound. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. It feels like forever. And now I think an hour goes by, and I like asked the nurse, like, I remember this part, I asked the nurse to see what was going on with me. So I told them my name, and they said, well, your doctor still like just now got the results, and he's looking at them right now. So another 30 minutes goes by, and the doctor comes in, and he pulls me to the side in this little like office room type thing. It had like two chairs literally where you sit in front of one another, and he looks at me and he says, you're pregnant. But what I'm more concerned about is the fact that the baby is in your tubes. And I said, what does that mean? Because I've never heard of this before. I've never heard of a tubal pregnancy in my entire life until then. So he's like, well, we're going to make an appointment for you to go to an actual OBGYN. They're going to check you out, but here's the options if the baby is in your tubes. I'm like, okay, what is that? He said we could go in, have surgery, and move the baby into the uterus, or secondly, we can abort the pregnancy. I'm thinking to myself, oh my god. So this is a Friday, so let me just tell you, I had to go the entire weekend worried about this, okay? So, and if you know me in real life or just in general, you know I worry. You know I have anxiety. You know I stress out. So I was stressing the hell out the entire weekend, freaking out. Oh my god, it was so bad. And it was so funny because the entire time that I'm there, I'm texting my ex like, hey, I'm pregnant, like I'm having to go get a vaginal ultrasound done, and then I'm texting him like, call me now, I have to tell you something. So I finally get a hold of him after I leave. I'm texting my mom, telling her that I'm pregnant and this, that, and other, and I finally I finally like got a hold of him. He called me back and he was like, what's up? Like, are you really pregnant? I'm like, yeah, I can show you the ultrasound pictures. I can show you the doctor, you know, the discharge papers. Because at this point I was discharged. I said, you need to come home now. So somehow he got a ride to my apartment, and at this point I was at my apartment, and we sat down, and I showed him the pictures, and I told him, and then he read on the discharge papers, because I did write down that possible tubal pregnancy. He said, what does that mean? And I'm like, the way the doctor said it wasn't great. So he told me these were my options if the baby doesn't pass through the tubes by the time I go to the doctor on Monday. And I told him it, and he's like, oh my God. And so he actually stays the entire weekend. He doesn't leave. He goes to the doctor's appointment, and I get there, and they're running tests on me. They want to like obviously run like a urine test on me to make sure I'm pregnant. Even though the hospital confirmed that I was, they still wanted to just do like a second opinion type of check thing. So obviously they confirmed I was, and they give me another vaginal ultrasound and a pap smear. They do my blood work, and then all of a sudden, because like obviously my ex is sitting there in the waiting room with me, they come in and they tell me that I ended up with chlamydia. And if you don't know anything about chlamydia is treatable. Like you can get rid of it by taking like antibiotics and stuff like that. So just know it wasn't a big, bad demon monster, like a virus or anything like that. It was just a little bump in the road. But anyway, I freaked out. He looked at me, he's like, I didn't give it to you because I've been in prison, or I had been in jail, and we get those tests done all the time, and da 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 da. But then I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, but bitch, you're out there hoarding around, like in my head, I'm like, thinking that. I'm probably giving him that look too. I'm not even sure if I did or not. So I'm just like, well, it's not me, because I hadn't had sex in 6 months prior to like us getting together, and I check all the time. Like I told you that from the get-go, that I check all the time. Like I'm always checking, you know what I mean? Because that's how I can find out if the motherfucker is cheating on me or not, or a person is cheating on me or not. Because if I can track something and I know that I was clean before that person, then it's on them. You feel me? So they told me that the baby looks good, that the baby is fine, and I just like got this like weird like look on my face, and I'm like, so no baby in my tubes? And they said, no, baby's in your uterus, fine. It must have just been still traveling on down, and it just needed another day or two. Because when I found out I was pregnant with Shyla, I was about 5 weeks, just letting you know. So I didn't even hear the heartbeat yet. So at this point, there was no heartbeat that I could hear of and stuff. So I ended up, after that, they gave me some antibiotics. I was so mad, but I didn't want to like seem mad in the car, because I was trying to figure out how I was gonna like talk to him about it and this, that, and other, and I wanted more evidence than just a hunch, you feel me? But I had evidence because he was gone for over a month. But I didn't want to like be that crazy nagging girlfriend, or I thought I was a girlfriend, let's just put it that way. So after I found out I was pregnant, I had told my buddy, my my very first gay best friend outside of high school. And when I told him, he was like, I'm gonna be the god diva. And I'm getting emotional because the last I heard about him, he passed away. So I don't know if it's true or not, but he had passed away from what I heard. And so I don't want to cry. I'm sorry, I'm not going to cry because it's so emotional when I think about him. And I haven't even thought about him until just now in a long time. So he was so excited though. We were talking about if it was a girl or what if it's a boy, and like he was asking me, like, you know, we were talking about names. I mean, it was just like, it was so fucking cute. Like if you guys had heard our conversations, you'd have been like, oh, this is so adorable, you know, like this is cute. And it's so crazy because after I found out I was pregnant with Shyla, my ex kept pouring around, and my gay best friend was the one that stuck it with me until I moved out of my apartment. He was always there for me, which is really crazy looking back now, how he was just there for me. And I think I took that for granted at that time. And then, okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about another thing that happened. So I ended up, after the appointment, I ended up getting another appointment for 3 weeks later to hear the baby's heartbeat and all that. And my ex didn't show up to that, like a piece of shit he was. But anyway, he didn't show up for that, but I heard her heartbeat. I got another ultrasound picture. At this point, they did the ultrasound on my stomach. At this point, they gave me more pictures. I was just super excited to hear her heartbeat, because that was something that I wanted to have done to make sure that the baby was okay. And so when I went into that doctor's appointment, I sat down with the doctor and I said, okay, so I want to basically tell you what happened. So I told him the whole story about how I went to the hospital, what happened the night before and everything. And the doctor looked at me and said, this is a very rare case, but I think you had miscarried a twin. Like, you were carrying twins and you miscarried one of the twin, but the other one survived. Now I want to talk a little bit about something that I have, which I think is very rare, but my grandmother has this as well, my nanny. I release 2 eggs a month, and so they think maybe that baby was a little bit older, but then when I got pregnant with Shyla, or when Shyla was conceived, that something happened along those lines to where it died, and I ended up passing it through, and then Shyla survived. So I just want to verify that I was having sex with my ex prior to when we was living in the car. We actually began having sex immediately after he got out of jail. So that could have been a possibility, because I know he got out towards the end of August, beginning of September. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm kind of faint on some of the memory of around this time, but I do know that we were having sex before we actually conceived in the car. But I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to verify that we was having sex even immediately after he got out of jail. So, and just to let you know, I've actually known him since I was 19, so that's why I immediately like jumped to the bone and, you know, fucked him. I honestly think that if that's what the doctor thinks, then I agree with. But I don't know. I mean, it's a possibility. But, you know, I looked in on like the history of our family and twins, and I don't think there's any twin history in our family. I kind of think she was a twin, because if I passed a blood clot and there was bone in it, okay, and I'm talking about there was an actual spinal cord bone, and what I'm thinking is that the baby's like 2 or 3 weeks older than what Shyla would have been, then of course there would be bone growth, you feel me? But like, they were really tiny, you feel me? If you want to see more storytime videos, definitely like this video and comment that you want to see more. I think the next one is going to be a story time about me talking about my pregnancy and the experience that I had with it. And then if you like that one so much, then I will do a childbirth video as well. And I may insert pictures as well on both of them. So I hope that you like this video. Definitely like it. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a little puddin'. And like I always say, whether you're dressed up, dressed down, you're beautiful. Bye.